Alright everybody, welcome back to the Fun Corporation. Here we are, beginning the 1971 season here at Funland. So where we started for this year, we ended up clearing the park and then reopening it. And right off the bat, in the first 2 months, I noticed we had a huge issue in terms of staffing cost here at Funland. So that immediately was something that I knew was off and that I needed to fix, and I wouldn't address it properly until like May of the next year, to the point where all that money I banked at the end of 1970 ended up being pulled out to be used to kind of keep the park afloat. As far as Funland goes, there's not a whole lot of change that went on in this park. There was a new hot dog stand I ended up putting in across from Recluse on the way down to Minetown, but outside of that, Funland stayed relatively the same outside of the longer operating season of 1971. The biggest change in relation to the corporation is the grand opening of Joyland Amusement Park in just outside of Albany, New York. And we will get into that the closer we get. But welcome to the 1971 Fun Corporation season breakdown. Alright, and as we move on over into Funland for its 1971 season, as I just stated before, not a whole lot changing in terms of guest experience here at Funland, other than the longer operating season from January to December. And then I did mention we added a hot dog stand on the way down into Minetown, just to get a little bit more cash flow from that kind of dry area of the park as you get further down. So one thing I wanted to talk about, some world building around Funland that I didn't get a chance to mention in the first couple episodes, because we mentioned that Joyland is located near Albany, New York. Well, I think Funland is a park that's going to be located near Sacramento, California. Now, at the time of 1970, when the park opened, there really wasn't any amusement competition to this scale of a regional amusement park in the area. I mean, you have the beach, you have the boardwalk parks with their wooden coasters in the state, kind of nearby, but the big competition at the time was going to be Knott's Berry Farm. And they really didn't get started as a amusement park until, or at least a coaster theme park, I should say, until Corkscrew opened in 1975. Because before that, I mean, they started as a berry patch and kind of worked themselves into rides and coasters and thrills, but at the time of Funland's opening, there really wasn't anything nearby. And even at the time era that we're in for Funland, you have Marine World, which would eventually turn into Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, but even at the time, Marine World was still 2 hours away, and it was actually located in Redwood City, California. So it was not in its current location of Vallejo at the time of Funland's opening date. So you kind of have the market cornered over there in Sacramento, California, where we're at as of the opening of this park. And then you have the big thrill rides that we have with, you know, Cyclone obviously being the big one of the tallest and fastest wooden coasters of its time. So, I mean, we have that to kind of rely on, because that's not really something you would find anywhere nearby, at least within an hour's drive of that area. So as far as Funland goes, that's really all we have. But what I really am excited to jump into is the grand opening of Joyland over in Albany, New York. So let's go ahead and jump over to Joyland here in just a moment. Alright, and we're going to get started here at Joyland with zoning our staff. One thing I definitely ran into big time at Funland was burning a ton of money on the amount of staff it takes to keep that park clean. The big difference and the big challenge I wanted to go for between these two parks was Joyland takes up a lot less space and it has a lot less land to work with than Funland does. I can't remember what map sizes I made. I know Funland's 500 by 500, and I think Joyland's base is only 100 by 100, but I can't remember exactly off the top of my head right now. But as we go through, I just want to get a couple of base handymen. I want one in the middle there to kind of keep the grass clean, so it looks nice when guests walk into the main gate and they have a nice kind of like clean area to look at with the grass all freshly mowed. You get the smell of fresh grass available. You get the smell of all the different food stands and candy store across the way there as you get through. So as you can see here, Joyland does have the same arcade that Funland has. I actually used the scenery manager to kind of literally copy and paste that over into this park. The big difference between the arcades at both parks being, of course, this park only has an entrance on one side as opposed to both, like the one at Funland. And as you can see, I'm starting to zone kind of into the downtown area, and there's our main standout of Joyland, and that's going to be White Cyclone, just to kind of differentiate it from the one at Funland a little bit. Layouts are very, very similar, almost identical, but there's a couple slight differences I made between the two, but both are going to be quote-unquote in-house coasters. And there's our second coaster right there, the little EF Miler, also called Mini Mania. The differences between these parks at the very beginning, very minute. Maybe some slight layout differences, but as you can see, the layouts of both parks as of right now are very, very similar between both, because there's the food court, you got the suburb spin ride. A couple differences in car ride, and as we kind of get down into the Minetown area, you can see the differences between the two. We have a little bit bigger of an eating area at Joyland compared to Funland. And none of this is planned. Like, none of this is like something I saw at Funland that didn't work or was a lot more popular at Funland that transferred over to Joyland. Because when I built these two parks, they were completely built, almost completely done prior to either one opening actually in-game. So they're both very, very similar. And I just wanted them to kind of wanted to go for like the Great America approach, where Marriott designed almost two parks that were virtually identical, but they both kind of grew separately, and that's what you're going to see here. And I think as we get further into this series, you're going to see Joyland have to remove a couple of rides, while Funland can just kind of plop whatever ride wherever we want over there, because we just have that much more space to work with. But with Joyland, we're much more limited on the land we have available, and I think that's going to be kind of the fun of going through these two parks and just seeing how they both grow differently. Now, when I kind of looked at the map of there's a nice website I use. Let me get the name of it for you guys that I use. Coasters Map. So I use that to kind of just vary and kind of see where various coasters are. Now, this is all based on the modern era, because I don't have a good map that reflects on the 1970s, unfortunately, but this is just kind of going what I have. Closest park to here that's like actually a major park is going to be Great Escape. And the fun thing about that is they opened in 1971, the year this park opens supposedly in our fake universe, is the year a Galaxy coaster opens at Great Escape, and that was their first coaster that they got to have. But this park much bigger in scale. Now, as I go through, I kind of zone the mechanics at first, but as I went through this year and as I kind of looked at Funland, I didn't really see much reason to zone the mechanics, because it just kind of traps them in their own area, and then they can't go fix anything anywhere, and they don't get the chance to spread out as much as I would have liked. So eventually I just got rid of the zoning of the mechanic areas altogether, just because to me it didn't really make much sense to zone them at all. So I kind of avoided that in that context. I did, however, zone a mechanic at White Cyclone and at Salem Mine Train, just so if the coasters went down, the two major draws went down, there's a mechanic right there to go ahead and get those fixed up and ready to roll again. Now, this second part, we're just going to go through and kind of place a couple of trash bins around the area, make sure it looks nice and clean, give guests a place to throw their trash away, places to sit along, because if you go to any real park, you're going to want benches and places for people to sit. I mean, it could be for parents watching their kids ride rides when they really don't want to. You got to give them a place to sit and eat. I mean, all very, very obvious stuff, but I figured I'd talk about it anyway as I go through the speed view here. But that's kind of the main part of Joyland that we got. Like I said, the very similar start for both parks. Joyland being a lot smaller, kind of like California's Great America ends up being to Six Flags Great America. Because with the Great America parks, Six Flags kind of pop whatever they wanted in, whereas California's Great America, the land was so valuable that they eventually kind of had to, limit what attractions they had and kind of remove stuff as they go. But you never know. Maybe there's some stuff that stays at Joyland comparatively to Funland as time goes on. All right, another thing I want to mention in relation to how my staffing works. If you watch me kind of place some mechanics and handymen in, I have a couple of what I label as full-time employees and a couple of what I label as seasonal. I guess I really don't label any of them as seasonal when I go through this, but anyone that's not labeled as full-time ends up being let go at the end of the operating season, because looking through, when you do the math for just the full-time employees, I think I have 3 handymen and then all the maintenance mechanics I want to keep on just because, you know, you need someone there to rebuild and maintain your rides. But each of those employees ends up costing me $82,000 per Fun Corporation month that we have. So I mean, in-game month it's only like $1,030, but the way I spread it out and have each in-game 10 in-game years end up being, you know, an in-game month, kind of tends to spread out the amount of labor that you need here. So it's really expensive to keep a lot of full-time staff on, so I kind of tried to limit that as much as possible, and as the off-season rolls around, you know, it's going to be up to the limited amount of staff we do keep to build up and keep the park clean over the off-season. But that's what we got here for the kind of basics of Joyland. We got the benches placed and the staff hired, so next step is going to be the grand opening. All right, and we are officially in May of the 1971 season, and that means it is officially time to get Joyland open for the season. So I'm going to go ahead and go through, we'll just stay paused for now and go through and open all the major rides here as we go around. So the train can open. And as we go around, actually I'm going to start again. I'm just going to kind of go through a park tour here. So as you enter, we'll go ahead and enter all the food stands. I'm not as worried about those. But we got the train open, the carousel, which should have the carousel music, and it does. We have a whip, which is one of the only rides that Joyland and Funland do not share, because whips, from everything I've researched, whips weren't really a thing really outside of Pennsylvania. But I figured New York was close enough. We'll go ahead and give a whip to Joyland. So we have our Hubrits roundup here. We have our chance to ride the yo-yo, which is going to be in the Mine Town section here at this park. We have our Wrangler Eli Bridge Scrambler ride. And then we have our Aerodynamics Mine Train, which, yes, I did set to 2 trains. We have our Aero Log ride, our Octopus, and then we'll go ahead and go through here as well. All the rides, like I said, most of the rides between these two parks are very similar. The only rides that Joyland has that Funland does not is going to be that whip, and I believe the rides Funland has are mainly going to be transports. So you don't have the monorail here, and you don't have the Midway main lift like the Sky Ride, but that might be something that changes further down, because I think I might end up putting a Sky Ride over here as well. But for the most part, these two parks are very, very similar, and we're going to go ahead and get this park ready to roll as the fairground music kicks off here at Joyland. So now we just gotta wait for the guests to start spawning in. And I might just go ahead and make sure, because I haven't seen any guests for quite a while. Where is my... It's gonna be under the map itself. Yep, there they come. Okay, just wanted to make sure that was still there. Alright, well, Joyland has officially opened for the 1971 season. We'll wait for our first group of guests to come in. Joyland going to be limited by the length of the season, so we're going to open Joyland in May and it's going to close at the end of October. So the nice thing about Joyland is with the full-time staff we have here, which when I simulate, I'm still going to subtract the total cost that they have, because the maintenance team at most parks is going to be full-time, and then you're going to have a couple of park services team members that are going to be full-time, just, you know, hire new staff and make sure the park stays clean over the off-season as well. So here come our first couple guests into Joyland for the grand opening, the 1971 season, and we'll kind of go through here and see what ends up being more popular here. The two parks very, very similar to each other in their opening years, but as we grow through the seasons, they're definitely going to be slightly different as things go on. So here we go. Joyland is officially open for the 1971 season and has started its journey in the life of a young theme park. Alright, and as we watch White Cyclone cycle here for its last run of the 1971 season, you can kind of tell by the mass exodus happening over there in the background. Joyland's first full season was a resounding success. In fact, there's a lot of ways in which Joyland was more profitable than Funland was from its opening season. This park did phenomenally well. And we'll go ahead and look right now at the total riders we had for our ridership. Now, the top of the bunch is going to be the Joyland Mainline Railroad. Transport rides in this game just have this amazing way of drawing people to them. They're just the most popular rides. We saw that with Funland, and you're going to see it again with Funland here at the end of the 1971 season. But we still have 2 more months to go before Funland's done for the year, so we're going to start with Joyland, our total riders. As far as the rides go, the most popular non-transport ride is going to be White Cyclone. I mean, that's the base for both of these parks. Your 2 massive wooden coasters that we have in White Cyclone was no different from Cyclone at Funland in terms of total riders, running 3 trains all season. I don't think we ran White Cyclone with 2 at all this year, actually. I think it ran 3 all season. But Salem Lake did all right. I mean, it had 30,000 less than White Cyclone did, but I mean, it still had a decent draw. I'll tell you a ride that was very popular was Salem Mountain Log Flume. I mean, log flumes at this era, I mean, because they were so new and because with the heat, they were just extremely popular rides. I mean, they were just ridiculous for the amount of people that would queue up for them, and in this game, it's no different. The log flumes are a very big draw, which is kind of funny because I feel like nowadays in the modern era, most people just don't want to get wet. I know me, when I go to parks, I tend to not ride the water rides just because I don't want my shoes to get wet. And with all the technology people have now, they just tend to want to avoid water, and honestly, I don't blame them. I'm kind of one of those people. I don't like to get wet on water rides. That's kind of what I think. I mean, that's what water parks are for, and I think water parks do that a heck of a lot better than water rides do. As far as the flats go, all of them are going to be doing about the same amount that you'd expect from, you know, your general flat rides. I mean, kind of in your 60 to 40,000 range for terms of total riders. So not much there really to throw you off guard, but let's go ahead and jump over on into the shop. And now I'm just going to do the total popularity for each of these shops. And popularity in this game is measured by the amount of guests that pass in front of the food stand compared to the amount of guests that stop and purchase something from that food stand. And satisfaction is going to be the exact opposite. Or not exact opposite, excuse me. Satisfaction is going to be the amount of people that come back and then go ahead and purchase something from that stand again. And you can do the same thing for ride popularity. However, I like to just go by total riders, but I'm too lazy to measure that in terms of shops. So if we look at our shop popularity here, all of the, the arcade stuff here, much more popular than it is at Funland. I mean, I'm having a heck of a hard time getting guests into the arcade down over at Funland. And I think a big part of that is just the vast amount of space that Funland actually has, because there's just so much more space for guests to roam around at Funland compared to Joyland, and I think you're getting a lot more people kind of condensed down into those smaller areas, and you'll end up seeing that over in the total revenue page. The total guests at Joyland is going to be a lot less than at Funland just because we don't have as much time to build up our guest numbers, nor do we have... No, it's really just the amount of time we had, because both parks, like I've mentioned before, very, very similar. And Funland only has a couple of transport rides on Joyland in terms of total amount of rides. But again, first season at Joyland, a resounding success. Its seasonal output means there's not as many people that are going to be stopping by, and nor are the rides going to be getting as many riders as Funland, and you'll see that here in just a moment when we go ahead and flip over into Funland. And here we are back again at the main park of the corporation, the original park. And the differences between 1970 and 1971, not much. I mean, we've talked about that before, but the ridership total numbers are going to be inflated again just because you have much more time for guests to get in and ride rides. And just bring those totals up. I mean, the popularity of the rides still going to be pretty much the exact same in terms of your transport rides. They're still going to be the ones holding up your total highest guests aboard. So I mean, we have our downtown airway, our monorail that really is just flying through guests, and then our midway main lift, our sky ride, being the highest total riders at well over 250,000, over 260,000 even for total amount of riders. But that one is inflated because I do calculate both of the lift tracks together as one total. So if you're looking at just single ride, it's going to be Downtown Airway, the Von Roll monorail we have at just under 260,000 riders in the season. As far as thrill rides goes, again, it's going to be Cyclone holding up the top of the standings there, giving just under 200,000 riders on the season at 184, and then over 300,000 total rides in its career already. And then Flat's going to be in that 80 to 60,000 rider range for the ones that operate for the full season, because we do have a couple rides that we run seasonally with the log ride and then the Minetown boating. And then as far as our closing rides go, this was the first year we closed Cyclone. We put that down for the entire month of November, just so your maintenance team gets a chance to look at the track, do the repairs they need to do, rebuild 2 of the trains, and then the 3rd train is rebuilt at a different time, just so you have trains to roll out and give your maintenance team plenty of time to just go ahead and refurbish the ride a little bit so it can keep running year-round. That's the big thing with year-round parks, is you have to make sure you find the time to give your rides the proper maintenance they need, and that's kind of the challenge we're facing in this series with some of the rides here. Whereas Joyland has that full off-season to kind of build upon and rebuild all your rides at the same time, Funland, you kind of have to go ride by ride and close them down and get those refurbished as they go through. So now on to our shop popularity. We have so many shops here, they won't all fit on the same page, but it's going to be pretty similar. The new hot stock stand we put in, bringing in quite a few. It hit the top 10 for total popularity for our guests. And then the stuff on the main midway as you just walk in is going to be the least popular, because guests, when they walk into the park during operational time, tend to not want to spend most of their time down at the very front of the park. They want to be, on the main midway. They want to be where the coasters are. They want to be where all the big rides are, not necessarily at the very front of the park. And a challenge we face with this is you're not going to get that, daily closing period where you have guests first getting in. They want to buy all the souvenirs and the food right on the way in. And you're not going to get that slew of guests that want to get that last souvenir on the way out, that last bite to eat on the way out. And that's something we just really don't get, and it's very hard to simulate, so I'm not even going to bother trying to simulate that with Funland, because I think what I'm going to start doing is just leave Funland open nonstop. So, the next year will start as soon as we hit year 120 on this. We just reset the date back to year 1, and we start again for the next season. So, we're just going to reset the date, keep the park open, so the guest flow is going to be pretty constant for this park as compared to not compared to Joyland, but compared to the way we did Funland last year, where we cleared it at the very end and then reopened it. Now we're just going to keep it open throughout, like a year-round park would. And then one last thing to note as far as this season goes, we're going to go ahead and drop on into our spending and our 1971 revenue tab. So as you can see, Fun Corporation burned money in the first few months of the year up until we hit May, and we kind of started to get into that peak season with Joyland opening for the first time. Funland was burning money, and the way I ended up solving that was I completely just rezoned all the staff and kind of cut as much staff as I could to save us money. When I first started, I think I had somewhere around 64 handymen roaming in the park, and I ended up cutting that back down to somewhere around 50, 55. And then what I ended up doing is, as the peak season hit from that June through October period, is I hired seasonal staff to kind of fill the gaps where guests might get a little bit more, rowdy, leave trash in different spots, and then, you're going to have some vandalism in those high traffic areas. So I think what I ended up doing was creating some seasonal positions just to kind of double cover those areas where we needed them. And then once the peak season rolled away at the end of October, I just let go of all those seasonal staff and then just kept my full-time crew of like 50 some handymen on, as opposed to like the 60 plus we have for the peak season. Because during peak season we can get away with a lot more. As you can see, we were averaging around at least 460,000 in profit for our peak season at Funland, and we did that with the extra staff we ended up adding in to keep our park rating high. Meanwhile, with Joyland, it's a smaller area, so you don't have to worry as much about keeping handymen spread out and kind of keeping them in an area that covers them, that keeps the area clean. while not worrying about having too much staff. Because with Joyland, I think we got away with somewhere around 35 handymen total, whereas Funland, even during its not busy season, is still going to have 50 plus handymen, and you're kind of seeing that in their total profit. And as I said, Joyland ended up being much more profitable because we didn't end up having the amount of staff we ended up having at Funland to keep that park rating up. And as you can see on the side, when we were burning through all that cash, I ended up having to drop into our bank a little bit and pull some money out. We ended up down to about $154,000, I think, and that's all we had left to kind of keep the company afloat. But we somehow did it, and we were able to bank over $2.7 million for the 1972 season, which I'm very excited to get into. But that will just about wrap us up for the 1971 season. And what I would like to do now is maybe delve into some comments I got into it. I got a couple, and I'd like to address them. I already did. I replied to both of them, but I'd like to just kind of address them on video as well. Alright, the first comment I got was from Jack Green 7342, and his question was, for your rides, how come you don't hide the entrance and exit buildings? And to be honest, I just don't like to hide them because it doesn't feel quite RCT without those entrance and exit buildings. When I was a kid, I would have dreams of kind of walking into like the two coasters at Diamond Heights through one of those buildings, and while I like to have realism, I like to also kind of keep that RCT feel, so I do keep the entrance and exit buildings, even though it is kind of a pain to build around them. Alright, my second question, and this is more of a comment, it's from Chessington Dragon Fury. It's about the convoy car ride we have in the kiddie section of Funland. It is definitely very bare, and it's something that I think as we go on, we'll kind of add some vegetation to some of these areas that are pretty dry, because another area that's really dry and I want to kind of grow upon, and we'll definitely get there pretty soon because I have some ideas for how I want to do it, is that path that goes from the main gate over to the downtown area. Very, very barren. Don't like it, but that's an area I have a kind of a plan to develop, and maybe I should take the time to kind of get some vegetation growing around the convoy trucking ride at Funland as well. Alright, and that's all I'm going to have for the Fun Corporation 1971 season. Pretty standard, other than, opening a brand new park, but Funland keeps chugging along, and now we have a seasonal park as well. So we're located at two ends of the coast, one just outside of Sacramento, California, and then one located just outside of Albany, New York. So two very good population draws and two very good parks that I'm very happy with thus far. And can't wait to get started with the 1972 season because I already have a new flat ride in mind, and it's one that I pretty much just forgot, and I'm very excited to add in. But thanks for tuning in to the Fun Corporation 1971 season rundown, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.